Hi, in this tutorial we're going to look at server-side includes. Now, server-side includes are a tool that you can use to help eliminate and reduce repetitive types of information on your pages. For example, maybe you have a website that has several different pages in it and the same content basically appears in many places within your site. So for this example, the header section here with the logo and the navigation section with the links on here. Maybe at the bottom we have a copyright, and we're also going to work with server-side includes in order to automatically display the date that the page was last updated. So we can use server-side includes to repeat information on many different pages within the website, but only type the content in once. Now, if you've used Dreamweaver, the equivalent of this in Dreamweaver is working with a library item. But if you're not using Dreamweaver, this would be an alternative way to get the same effect. So as we said, we're going to create reusable bits of code that we can use over and over again within our site. Now, in the old days, what developers used was a tool called frames. Now, frames are deprecated in the most recent version of HTML, meaning it's not used anymore, and it's kind of hard for users to work with, and they were kind of complicated and not very user-friendly. So let's just take a quick look at what frames are and how we can get the same effect through server-side includes. So I'm going to open up my browser, and I have a page in here called the I Hate Frames page. And you can just do a Google search for I Hate Frames, and this is one of the top results. In this example, the concept of frames was really a good idea, but the way that it's executed is not the best. So in this example frame page, not only does it look pretty hideous, but the idea behind the frames is that you can have separate HTML files for different parts of your page. So this top part where it has the I Hate Frames page and these wonderful little spinning globes, well, this is one HTML file. So this is a complete separate HTML file from the content that is in this left-hand column. And then there's another completely separate HTML file, which is this main content area. And yet at the bottom there is another completely separate HTML page at the bottom for a navigation section. So you can see that this lets us scroll independent sections of the page for each frame. So this actually loads 4 different HTML pages when the browser is displaying this. So the concept is good because you would have, say you had your navigation section in here, and if you had 10 different pages in which this showed up on and you decided to make a change, you'd have to open up each page and manually change or copy and paste the new navigation section in here. So if you are using frames, we'd only have one HTML file to change, and then any page that used this frame set would automatically have that change. So that's where the idea does work to an advantage, but you can see that it's a disadvantage for the user. Some of the problems that frames run into, a main one today is that it's very hard for mobile devices to even work with this kind of configuration, especially on a small screen. Just imagine what this would look like on a small smartphone screen, or even a tablet for that matter. The other issue with frames is that when you go to print them, depending on the browser that you're using, sometimes it will only print where you just last clicked. So if I had just clicked into this section or was selecting something in here that I wanted to print, it would only print this frame. or if I had clicked in the side column over here, it would only print that frame. So the user would probably print something and it not be what they want, and then they'd have to come in and try to figure out how they can print the whole page. The other issue was with bookmarks. When you're bookmarking the site, are you bookmarking the HTML file that's in this column? Are you bookmarking the HTML file that's here? Are you bookmarking the whole frame set together? So that was another issue. And also, how do your search engines deal with this kind of data? We don't have a single page that has all of this information in there. A search engine may just find a match that's in here, and so it may just open up this HTML file without being in the entire frame set. So there are a number of usability issues around frames. So we can create a similar type of an effect with using server-side includes and have separate HTML files and text files that the server sort of blends together before it sends it to the user's browser. So for example, in our file, we're going to have a separate text file that's going to contain this header and navigation section. We're going to have a separate text file that's going to contain the copyright information at the bottom. And so any page that uses that text file as an include will grab it and put it in here. Then the beauty of that is that if we have one single file that contains this content, we can easily update it so that all the pages that use it will be updated. And that's the concept behind the library in Dreamweaver. So this is a finished sample of the page, and I'm going to go into the HTML version of this and show you how it's set up. We have some style sheet information that is laying out our page. But within our page, we have some divisions. The whole page is wrapped up in one big wrapper division. And then within that, we have a header division that has the banner at the top. And then we have a navigation division that has our links in it. And then we have some main content area, and then at the bottom we have another division for copyright. So what we would like to do is break out the pieces that are going to be repeated across multiple pages. So this will make it easy for us to update and modify. So one of them will be copyright section, and another one is going to be this section up here where we have our header and our navigation. So to begin with, I'm going to select the text that I want to reuse over and over again. So I've got my header section that has the image and the navigation section with the links. And I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to create a new text file. So in my editor, I'm going to create a new text file and paste this in. And I'm going to save this. Now this can be saved as an HTML file. It can be saved as a text file. You can make your decision about what your preference is. But I'm going to save this. I'm going to save it as a text file in the folder that has all of the rest of my files from my site in here. And I'm just going to call it header-nav and save. And now I'm going to go back to my index page that has this in here. And what I want to do is when the browser or when the server is going to send this page to the browser, I want it to go out and grab that header nav text file, and I want it to put it in this position. And so in order to do that, one of the steps is to put in a server-side include. Now the server-side include starts out looking like an HTML comment. So it's inside a tag that has the exclamation point, 2 dashes, and then I would put in a £sign and the word include. Now this is important. Don't put a space between the £sign and the dash, and don't put a space between £sign and include. Otherwise your include will not work. After that, I'm going to say include, I say file equals and the name of the file that I want it to grab and put in here, which is header-nav.txt. And then I close my tag just like the closing part of a comment tag. Now, just by doing this and creating my separate text file won't work, right? If I go into my preview, there's some things to be aware of. See, I deleted the text out of here that had the header and the navigation section in the top. In a lot of editors, it doesn't show you the preview for server-side includes. Now, Dreamweaver will show you. So in order to be able to test this accurately, you need to do a couple of things. First of all, our file extension has to change. It has to be a .shtml, and the S is in there for server-side include. When the server sees that it's a .shtml, it knows that it has to do some processing before sending the content to the web browser. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to close my index.html file and I'm going to rename it. So in my files, I'm going to rename index.html to index.shtml. Now by doing that, even in this editor that I'm using and preview it, my server-side include still doesn't show. And so most of the time it has to be on an actual web server that is set up to be able to use server-side includes. That's another main concept, is your server has to have that capability turned on. So you need to check with your web host to make sure that server-side includes are turned on. So in order to test this, I'm going to upload my header nav txt file and my index shtml file, as well as the graphic files and cascading style sheet files that it needs in order to display things properly. So I'm going to pause this and upload these to my server. Okay, so I have uploaded my files into a separate folder on my web server so that it will be easy to see all of the things related to this example. So I'm going to go to a web browser and we'll go in and see what that looks like. Okay, so in the browser, my shtml file is working just fine. It was able to come in here and find this header nav section and then insert it in here. So let's repeat that again, and we'll do that with the copyright symbol. So we'll go back into the index shtml and let me copy this, and I'm going to put it down here where the copyright section is. But this time I'm going to name my file copyright.txt. And since this is the piece of code that is going to change and update, I'm going to cut that and make a separate copyright.txt file. Create a new HTML or a new text file, and then in this text file paste in that code and save it in with the rest of my files. And again, I'm going to call it copyright.txt and save it. And now I'm going to upload it to my server. So I'm just going to upload the index shtml file here. And I'm going to go back to the browser and let's refresh this and see what happens when our server-side include file, this, is not uploaded. Okay, so when it's unable to process the server-side include directive, so we get an error occurred, and that is just because in this case I haven't uploaded the file that it needed to include. So if I come back to my FTP program and I put in the copyright.txt file and drag it over, now we should be able to come back here and refresh, and now it grabbed this text file and put it in. Okay, next let's look at how we set up the other pages in the site to be able to use that same header navigation text. Because right now, let me open up my editor, right now they're set up, if I come to the careers page, they're hard-coded in with the header and the navigation information typed in. So what we'll do is we'll come back to the index page, and I'm just going to copy this include file header nav, and we're going to paste that into the other pages and replace this with our include. So rather than using this, we want it to go out and use the other include file that we created. So I'm just going to quickly come into the other few pages that I have, and we're going to delete that, and that gets replaced with one single text file. And we'll also go through, and I'm going to repeat that for the copyright information. So if I come back to my index page and I grab a copy of this, then I can come into my other pages and I'm going to replace the copyright text with that single line to include the copyright file. Right, so now again, these other pages have the server-side include files in here, but they're HTML files and they need to be changed to SHTML files. So what I'm going to do is close each of these and rename them. I could do file save as and file save as, but I want to keep my file names, right? Rather than having a careers HTML and a careers SHTML and a contact SHTML, it gets kind of confusing as to, okay, which one was the last one that I edited? So I find it easier to just rename those files by adding in the S. So now if I upload these to my server, we can test this out. So I want to make sure that I grab the changed files, my new SHTML files, and put them over to my server. My included files, my header and copyright files, are already over there, as well as the style sheet. So if I come back to my web page and I click on my links, it says file not found. And I can show you, I'll pop down here, I'll show you the reason. It's saying it's looking for products.html, but we renamed the files to .shtml. So that means that all of the links that are in the navigation section are wrong, right? These are going to .html, and we renamed everything to be shtml. So again, now with changing one file, I just changed my header nav text file, and if I take that file and re-upload it to my web server, I come back to my browser, let me go back, and I'm going to refresh this page so that it gets the new link information in here. And so now this should link to my products page, then the careers, and then the contact us. So by changing that one file, all of the other pages, the SHTML files that use that navigation, got the updated links. Let's come back here. Let's make another change that's a bit more obvious. So let's say after contact us, we're going to add another navigation link. And let's say we're going to add a page that has all of our social references. So where they can find them on Facebook, their Twitter account. So we'll say social media. So we've added a new link in here. So without using server-side includes, we'd have to go into every other page that had this navigation on it and copy and paste this in. But we don't need to open up any of our other HTML files because they're already using this file as a server-side include. So let me come back to my upload program, and I'm going to re-upload this navigation text file. We'll come back to the server here, refresh our page, and here is our new link that just got added. So we're on the index page, and if I go to products, it's on here. Careers, it's on here. The contact us page is on here, because this is being grabbed in as a separate text file that the server is including as it's sending this information. If I look at the source code, you can see that it included the information in here. Here is the header, and here is the navigation section, and here is the copyright information. So really it's including it. It's grabbing that whole text file and it's sticking it in here where we had the server-side include command. So when you're looking at the source code of your web page from your server, you won't see the server-side include command. You will only see that in your original code file. Okay, now some other things to know about server-side include. Right, we have it set up right now. Our server-side include files are in the same location as our other shtml files. But what happens if we start to get all neat and tidy and we're going to make a separate folder and put our server-side includes in them? Or we're in another folder and we need to reference a server-side include file that's in another location. That's going to impact how we reference our server-side include. So on my web server, I'm going to create a directory and I'm just going to call this includes and keep all of my included files, my copyright and my header text, in that includes folder. So we've moved it to another location so it won't continue to find the server-side include and we get our error messages displaying here. So I'm going to go back into the editor and let's go into the shtml file. Now if we have the file in a different location other than where our file is, we have to reference this a little bit differently. We say virtual, include virtual, and then in here we specify the path to the include folder. So I called it includes. And I'm going to need to do the same thing down here for my copyright. So now from wherever the index shtml file is, it's going to find the includes folder and then from there find headernav.txt. So let's just see if this one works. I'm going to upload it to the server. Now this is the contact us page, so I'm going to just come back here and go to the index page. Okay, so the index page now is fixed and working, but if I go to products, right, that is still got the old reference in there. So what I have to do is come back into my editor and I need to open back up the other shtml files so that they use this format instead. So what I'll do is open these up and then I'm just going to quickly revise this so that they have the new format in here. And next we'll take those files that we just updated with those changes, upload them to the web server, come back to the browser and test them and make sure that they are all updated and finding the right files in the right location. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how to get this to display the last updated date on the bottom of your pages without you having to actually go in there and type that change in yourself. So back in the editor, I'm going to do this just on the index page, but where we have the last updated, I'm just going to paste some code in there and I'll explain it. We have, first of all, a config. So we have #config instead of #include. So these are actually the server-side commands. #config is going to specify configuration format, and we're going to do that in order to be able to configure the date and time layout here. So we have one command that's going to specify how something that's coming up should be formatted, and then the next command is file last modified. So we have #f last mod. And virtual equals, this is the name of the page that we want to use in order to get the information of when it was last modified. So let me just upload this to the server, show you what that looks like, and then we'll look at some resources where you can go to find out, well, what does all this mean and what if I wanted a different layout for my date and time? So I'm going to upload this to my server, go back to my web browser and refresh it. And so from here you can probably start to figure out what that coding meant from what was in here. So if I split this screen, we can see %A is the day of the week, %B the month, And then we have this %sign little m, %sign d, %sign year for month, day, and year. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, and you can look at some other references and some other resources to get an idea of the codes that you can start to include and what features might be beneficial to you. Here is one, which is the HTML Goodies website. Bring this down so you can see the URL, htmlgoodies.com. And he has a nice tutorial here on working with server-side includes, dates and times, with the time format similar to what we just looked at. And there's a nice table here that breaks out for you which you would select and including in that time format. And there's another one for server-side includes by example, which gives you some really nice breakdowns of time formats for different ways of displaying days and times. So server-side includes are a nice alternative to including information on multiple web pages for things that are repetitive, and also for things like, in this example, the last modified date, but there are lots of other things that you can start to get into in here and see what those may be by doing some other investigation.